Welcome, everybody, to the Coach Brew podcast. This is one of those special episodes where you don't just get yours brewly doing a little monologue for your morning or evening commute. You're getting an in-depth interview, which I am told people like better. My listeners tell me, love your guest. You're tolerable, but we love your guests. So we're going to roll with that today. I think you're going to love this guest. I feel an obligation to everyone to explain, kind of the what's in it for them and why you ought to listen to what my guest, Jeff Biggars, has to say. So let me introduce Jeff, and then let me explain why you really need to grab a pen and paper, take notes, and listen carefully. Jeff is the master craftsman behind Biggar Hats. Jeff is, he is a hatter in Decatur, Texas, and makes the world's greatest cowboy hats. I heard him say on a podcast he makes the greatest cowboy hats on his block in Decatur, Texas. But I think you could probably
can't be beat.
You're very humble, Jeff. So I wanted to bring Jeff on, besides the fact that I am a cowboy hat aficionado, as you can see from the hat I'm wearing if you're watching this on YouTube. But I am also a fan of artisan handmade things made by master craftsmen. And if you've read any of my books or listened to this podcast for any length of time, you remember my interview with Jack Marucci, who is the master craftsman and mastermind behind Marucci Baseball Bat Company. You may have heard my interview with Dana Bourgeois, who is the master craftsman in the old mill next to the Green Bridge in Lewiston, Maine, who makes the world's greatest guitars. The technical term is luthier. And Dana makes, it's kind of a who's who of musicians who use a bourgeois guitar, sources his wood from literally all corners of the globe. Luke Bryan's guitarists use a bourgeois guitar. Ricky Skaggs, like anyone in bluegrass who is anyone, uses one of those guitars. And, these may seem like, obscure or very niche, subject matter, but I assure you it's not. Jeff falls right in that same category with the Jack Marucci's and the Dana Bourgeois. This is someone who is a master craftsman, who's committed to excellence. I think there's something we can all stand to learn from anyone like that who's outstanding in their field and literally puts their name on and in their product. And I think it's more than a product. It's also an exceptional service that you see. Similar to Marucci Bat Company, Jeff doesn't have brand ambassadors. He's not paying anyone to wear his product. People voluntarily, happily purchase it and wear it with pride. And I wanted to just get inside the mind of Jeff and help you all get inside the mind of Jeff. See what you can learn about, the craftsmanship that needs to go into what you do on the daily, and how you can level up your game as he has. So Jeff, wanted to thank you for joining us today. I know you're super busy. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. So, there is an old story about Steve Jobs. I don't know if you've heard this, and this is why I love craftsmen like you who put their name in and on their product. His dad had him paint the picket fence in his front yard, and he really didn't want to do it. So he kind of just did a half-assed job painting the outside of the fence, like the public facing side of the fence, and just left the inside looking shabby. And his father had a few choice words for him and explained to him, that's not the way we do things. We put our name on our work, and it's a first impression that people have of our family. So you're going to repaint the exterior. You're going to make sure the interior looks just as nice. And then you're going to sign your name on that paint job, literally on that fence. And he credits that with being kind of the secret behind his success and his that lesson he learned, just the meticulous nature and attention to detail. And if you crack open a MacBook, which I don't suggest anyone who's listening actually try and pry apart their MacBook to see this, because you might not get it back together. But he actually has his engineers sign it's either their name or their initials on the inside cover of each, iPad and MacBook that gets constructed. And that's just kind of the level of excellence and commitment to excellence that, a master craftsman or an artist puts into their work. And that's really the Jeff Biggars story as well, I think. And I think you'll all learn that as you hear him share his story. And Jeff, if you could kind of just let's take us back to the beginning of not just how you got started in the hat business, but just what was an early experience similar like that Steve Jobs moment with his father. What was an early experience for you in your formative years that really kind of either led you to I would say what you do right now is art. It's part art science. What's an early experience in your formative years that you think might have pushed you towards entrepreneurship?
Functional art, maybe. What a cowboy hat is. But you say, half-ass. That was my dad's favorite saying. You don't half-ass anything. So that certainly rings true. Lost him kind of early on, but things that he taught like that just kind of always stick with you.
Yeah.
But from an early age, we were all working, my brother and I. That the work ethic just has to be there. And I think there's a lot of extremely talented people that have this God-given gift to do whatever they have, but they don't have the work ethic to be as good as they could be. I've seen people do things that just blow my mind. Well, why don't you do that for a living? Well, they just can't put the work forward to make it happen.
That's to your point. That's kind of like the mind-blowing thing for me with Super Bowl commercials. You mean that agency can make an outstanding commercial once a year?
Once a year, yeah.
What are you doing for your clients the other 364 days?
Well, that's why it's so good.
Right?
That's why it's so good. It takes them a year to make that. But I think things are, I don't know, just especially in these times, things like hats and boots and things made by hand are precious to me, because I think over time that's going to kind of fall away as things get more automated. So I love what I do. I love that I'm able to do it on the level that we are able to do. I wish we could do more. Unfortunately, because of the way we make hats, the way we do things, it takes a long time. And we would be a much bigger name. We would be in a lot more places if I made hats the way other production companies make hats, because I can make a lot more. But that's just not who we are. So we're fine with being the little guy. That's not a problem. We got a big name and a big product, so we're fine with that.
I was telling my wife, I was interviewing you, and she said, Jeff Big, his last name is Biggars. I said, yep. She was like, he's definitely from Texas.
Oh, is that a Texas name?
I said, yes.
Everything's bigger.
Yep.
It's funny because my dad was 6'2", 405. My brother, he was over 500 pounds at one point. And then, I was just always the shortest, the skinniest. You're like, your last name is Biggars? So I'm like, yeah,
that's funny.
it.
The irony of that, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that it's interesting. A lot of times, entrepreneurs, consultants, like I tend to refer to us as like corporate refugees. You
Yeah.
know, like we don't, most people don't start a business when they're little, go to college, major in entrepreneurship, and then immediately strike out on their own as a small business owner. It's sort of lateral. It's like if you enter teaching and you become an educator later in life, like the certification process is literally called lateral entry certification. And I do think that, with entrepreneurship, there's very much, most of us, it's lateral entry. We're coming from somewhere else, maybe a little later in life. For me, I was a college lacrosse coach for 12 years. I got fired for not winning a national championship on my birthday. 0 stars, do not recommend. And that was the day I became an entrepreneur. It was lateral entry at age 37.
Mhm.
Where did you come from, and what made you decide, okay, I'm going to strike out on my own and I'm going to do it now? Like, this is the time is right.
Well, I used to, back when I was 18, okay, I trained these horses for this guy, and I loved doing that. Absolutely loved doing that. I moved off, and then when I moved back, I wanted to do the same thing, and I just couldn't do it for, and I was not demanding a whole lot of money, but I just couldn't get paid what I was getting paid. So
Sure.
I got a job at a Western chain here in Texas, a really large one, and I loved it because I was dealing with the people that, the Western world that I like to deal with. Um, and they got me into a management role, and I was loving that because I started off as a boot boy, a stalker. So uh, as I moved up, I liked it, but at the same time, they were transitioning into a more of a corporate kind of chain thing, whereas they were built on, the individual store. So we did all the
Sure.
ordering, and we had a huge say in how that store performed because we bought, what we sold. And then they took all that away and did it out of the corporate office, and just kind of left us as I don't know. I mean, we were still managers, but we were kind of like, we just didn't have as much into it as
Yeah.
we did.
It's kind of like
And
radio today, isn't it? Like, there's no request lines anymore in most
yeah,
stations. It's
you're
corporate
pushing a button
radio,
and
and
playing what they.
you're told by corporate what's going to be played in your local market, regardless of what people really want.
Yeah, and you say that, but there's a radio station here in Fort Worth that is huge, huge as far as the Texas country um, thing goes. But their DJs play what they want, and I mean they're big because of that. And
Yeah.
I mean they're known worldwide. But there's got to be an exception to that. But it was the same way for me. So I got to the point. It's like I want to do. I was 22, 23, and by, by far couldn't have started my own business at that point. But I knew I wanted to do something else. So I went to custom hat shop. I was the manager there, and it's funny because I was brought in as the manager, and I had like 5 guys under me. All of them were way better than I was. I mean, as far as shaping hats.
Were they
And at
older
that
than
point,
you too?
what's that?
Were they older than you too?
Yeah, most of them were. I was 22. There was another guy that was 21 or 22. Everybody else was over 30. One guy was 50 something.
That's a lot of
And
pressure and a lot of responsibility at an early age. You
it's a
get
lot of
thrust into that
pressure.
role.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with pressure. It's
Yep.
just, um, it's not being able to back up what I talk about, because I talk a lot of noise, but I like to think I can back it up. And at that point, I just couldn't. These guys were run circles around me, and I'm telling them what to do. So that was certainly a learning experience. And I made it a point to get extremely better really fast. But that kind of thinking that drove me away from the corporate deal kind of pushed me ahead. But I was with that company for 12 years. And I just learned almost everything there, but at that point I still didn't, hey, I'm going to break off and do my own thing.
So you're kind of getting,
that came later.
It was almost an apprenticeship without you even realizing that's what it was at the time.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. It certainly was. We ended up, but I went to this little custom hat shop, but the owner of that store ended up buying one of the biggest hat manufacturers there is. So, they are now. They weren't then. We were still pretty little, but we took it a long way.
Can I stop you right there for 1 second, Jeff? Because I feel like this is one of those moments where, like, I feel like we're kindred spirits. Because I've noticed something with you.
What's that?
You talk about these experiences and you never mention the companies by name because these are like rival companies. And when I was a college coach, I always I would never refer to my competition by their name. I'm just not going to give them the PR.
Those guys.
I'm not. Yeah. So it's kind of like, Ohio State refers to Michigan as that team up north.
Yeah.
So a little sports analogy there, but I love that about you. I feel like we're kindred spirits. You refuse to refer to them by name and give them any, brand impressions. And I love that. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's
that's
much
fine.
respect on that one, man.
People who know me know who they were. So, but I was with them, for a long time, and my boss, who was just a legend, he hated when I was on the factory floor. He just hated it because the way I wanted to know how everything worked. And if somebody was out that day or we were behind, if I could sit down there and help us get hats out, to me, that's just a win. And so I learned everything. I learned how to sew, press, the whole shebang. And
you also earn the respect of the people that work for you when you're willing to get your hands dirty. You're willing to do that. There's no job too small or too dirty for you to be willing to pitch in and do as well, right?
Oh yeah, but it helps you just understand what they're doing, and it can go either way because I jump on somebody, hey, why aren't you getting these hats out? Oh, excuses, and I'm like, and then I'll get in there and go, oh well, maybe they can't, so you have to fix a problem. And at the same time, why can't you get these hats out? Excuses. And then I'll go in there and, just debunk that and go, no, that I think being able to do that, because if not, you're just at the mercy of your employees.
Yep. That's a huge leadership tip right there.
If you don't know, you just don't know. So if somebody tells me something now, I can go, well, no, you should be able to do this many a day, or, that happened because of this. And you just do not know that without being on the floor every single day. And I always got in trouble with that before, because I wasn't in the office. But there's absolutely no way we would have any of this without knowing all of that.
So how'd you transition to striking out on your own, from that point? In those years that you invested there, what was kind of that moment that gave you the push to just do it?
Well, what I was, I had a family, and I just worked all the time. I was gone probably 3 months out of the year. We did 14 shows a year. I was always gone. And that family, ended and I mean, just a lot of it was just because of so much work. So I missed out on so much with my first 3 kids. I got 7 kids now.
Mhm.
I just missed out on so much. So I start off, new wife, and we have our first kid. Everything's going great, but I'm always on the road. And we had been, I've been with this company for 12 years, and for the first 6 years of the major production company, we were just losing money, just hemorrhaging money. My boss just kept going back and getting loans because he just believed that it was going to work, and it finally did, and then all of a sudden we're just like the hottest thing. We're making money. Everything's great. He gives me a raise. He gives me a promotion. And with this promotion comes even more travel.
Yep.
And I was like, I just, it's not what I want to do. Not what I want to do. So I thought about it, and I was like, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time I'll do something else. And I was extremely cocky. My name's Jeff Biggars. I can get a job anywhere I wanted. So I talked to my boss, who was getting ready to go rope for 6 weeks. And I wasn't going to work for him for 12 years and then call him on the phone and go, hey, I quit.
Sure.
So I may have rushed it a little bit, but I wanted to make sure I told him face to face. So
yeah, it'd be like breaking up with somebody via text message.
Yeah. So I told him face to face, and I took a little time off. I've been working so much, and I started looking for a job, and everybody's like, "Oh, really? Yeah, we'd love to have you. We just need you to travel this, and and I was like, that's my thing though. I don't want to travel, and they're like, well, we don't need you, so it was I was like, I have this impressive resume. I've been in management since I was 18, and just been in charge of multi-million-dollar companies, and I couldn't get a job because I wouldn't travel. But as far as the Western industry goes, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
So I don't have a college education, and to make the money I felt like I needed to make, I had to have a college education. And so these people just wouldn't give me a interview at all. And I'm like, I promise I can do that. It doesn't matter. You don't have that paper. So I had to go to work for my father-in-law, who owned a trucking company, and I have no idea what is involved with trucks at all. I mean, this is the last thing I ever would have saw myself doing, but it was either that or, run concrete or something. I just,
Yep.
I was at hard labor or this, and so I did it, but I was still designing hats. I designed the patterns on the straws, and I was doing that for, biggest company there is. And I would get all these samples in. And so I got these samples in, and there was this old dispatcher for my father-in-law, and he goes, hey, why don't you just open your own store? You do all this. I said, God dang, buddy, that's a lot of money. And my father-in-law was there, and he kind of sat up and he goes, how much money? And I was like, well, I mean, a lot. And he goes, how much? And I was like, oh, you're serious? I don't know, but I'll tell you in the morning. So I go home, work all night on a spreadsheet, and I make kind of 2 proposals, and I say, this is what it's going to take to kind of build it over time, and just a small little thing, and then this is what it's going to take to hit the ground running, and he goes, well, let's hit the ground running. So
Wow.
wow. So you get on the phone, and I been buying machinery and stuff for years. So I had all these contacts, and put together a little operation very quickly. Found a place. I actually looked at the place on the square in the very beginning, and it didn't appeal to me. And we kind of came around on it couple months later and got in there, and I'm glad we did. That place was a huge part of who we are, so, but that's how it started, kind of a chance thing. And my father-in-law seeing an opportunity, and going from there.
Wisdom of an older dispatcher at just the right time, who, just kind of
just
happened
open
to
his
say
mouth.
that, whether it was in passing or casually or not. Like, that's the seed that sort of got planted with you and your father-in-law.
Yeah, because my uncle or whatever, on my wife's side, we had talked. He's a machinist, and we had talked before about doing it, and we kind of sprung it on him a year before, and he just showed no. I don't know if he didn't hear us or what, but he just showed no interest. So
timing's everything.
Yeah, timing is everything.
What's that like? It's a family business. What's it like working with family? And how do you maintain boundaries? I think it's one of the biggest. First of all, family business is very unique compared to anything else, and one of the biggest challenges is literally and figuratively not taking work home with you. And just how do you maintain healthy boundaries? I think a lot of people would love to learn something here with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't call it healthy, but my mother-in-law is the CFO, and honestly, she's the real boss. And so her and my father-in-law are retired. They sold the trucking business, got out of that. She comes up here every single day. She's here every single day. My father-in-law is in and out. He's still, he's a mechanic. He still works on all this stuff. All this machinery's over 100 years old. He'll come up with stuff that just amazes me. I'm a hat maker. I'm not a mechanic or anything like that. So being able to solve problems like that has meant everything on keeping us going. But my mother-in-law is just here every single day, and we're just fighting all day. Everybody's just watching us, and but it's all to get the hats out. So it's kind of cool. I never thought, and matter of fact, we talked about like working at the trucking company before. It's like, I'll never work with family. I'll never do that. But I mean, it just worked out. But I mean, I won't tell you that it's easy, And so, one minute they'll be like, why'd you do that? And and it's like, oh, well, the grandkids are coming. It's there is a balance of family and work. And I can't take these machines home with me. So I kind of, when I leave, I'm done. But she does all the office work, and she'll work here all day and then go home and do reports, So having that, just I can't say fortune. I mean, it's beyond that,
Sure. So it seems like you're in an industry that's a little different than many other professions and industries, in that technology plays such a massive role today more than ever, with so many businesses, so many industries, in terms of making things, getting them out the door, just the whole process of creation. You had mentioned earlier you use equipment that is old equipment, and I know just from my understanding of your industry, some of this stuff's 100+ years old. The equipment, the tools you use. How has your industry evolved? I mean, even like how you size a hat, you use apparatus that you put on people's heads that's
1870s.
Yeah, from the 1800s. Like, how has it evolved, and is technology entering the world of craftsmen who make things by hand?
Yeah, technology, I guess, enters. We use things, I guess, that are fairly new, but the way I look at hats is the way I look at a lot of things. And your brightest minds usually go where the money is. And so now you have computers, you have space stuff like that. But back then, the thing was hats. And I mean, they're really, besides old, there was really no bigger business. And so you had these incredibly sharp engineers come up with these machines, and that just had to make millions of hats.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have a machine that would last a year. They had to make millions of hats. And so we're just so fortunate to still be using this stuff. But the very first machine, well, the tool that we use to measure you that we have is from the 1870s. The first big machine we have is from the 1890s. And we have some like plating machines that like we built, but basically everything else is really old. And
There's a lot to be said to that expression. They don't make it like they used to, huh?
yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't think we can make it better with all of our stuff that we have now. I just don't think that we can make it better. So with the old stuff, I don't think you can beat it.
It's got to be one of the most unique things about your industry and your profession.
Yeah, and boots are kind of the same way. They use really old machines too. But with the way that because felt is a natural product, it's not metal, so it has these properties that are very. I mean, there's a lot of variables in hat making.
Sure.
And so I just don't think computers would help you to make a hat better.
So technology,
I think technology peaked like 100 years ago.
Wow. Technology wouldn't help. I guess my next question is like, what's your biggest challenge you're facing, and how are you tackling that? If technology is not like the great facilitator as it is in other industries.
Well, one thing that has been very beneficial to us is I've got a friend who, whereas I do all these old things, he does all these new things, and he's always on just the edge of everything. And he was the first person I know to have a 3D printer. And the first thing we said was like, we got to build parts, for these tools. So that little device that we use, the first thing we did was build parts for it. And so they're little intricate wooden parts that you would have to make by hand, and he just 3D printed them for us, and they interchange and work great. So it is a challenge to keep everything running. Like I said, my father-in-law's a mechanic, and we had, from his trucking company, we had mechanics, machinists, and welders, kind of all of it at our disposal, and they've helped build this place and keep everything going. And then I learned how to work on the sewing machine. All the sewing machines we have are over 100 years old, so
wow,
they're great, but they do break down as well. But I learned early on that I had to figure those out, or else you're out of business, Sure. So now I can pretty much take them apart and put them back together. But those are the challenges, is keeping everything going.
And I think with everyone who enters entrepreneurship and is building business, there's a lot of as much training or apprenticeship as someone might have, as much guidance as they might have from a mentor. There's a lot of trial and error. I think owning a business and being an entrepreneur is in many ways a great experiment or series of experiments. What was your biggest failure to date, and what'd you learn from that experience?
Biggest failure. Oh,
It's
well,
easy for people to talk about their successes. And I think we
yeah.
learn way more, like as a coach and an athlete, I think you learn way more from losing than you ever will from winning. Winning gives you a false sense of security, that feeling like you did, oh, we won, everything must have gone great. So I think we learn a lot more from loss and failure.
Yeah, I think my biggest failure was, to be honest, just last year. We had market is where we go to, Dallas. That's where all the stores come in and shop with us. And so we had this market that was just unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable. We were doing better numbers than when I was at the old company. And it's just like everything we worked for, everything was coming full circle. And so we only had, because in 2020 we had 7 retailers, and we had 6 in Texas, we had 1 in, well, Heckalope in Indiana, and that was it. And just almost overnight, we're at 50. And I was like, this is awesome. All we got to do is throw some people at it, and we got this. But the people are hard to come by these days. And that was just a great challenge. We had the machinery, and we had, for the most part, we had the bodies. We did run out of some stuff, but we just didn't have the people. And so we had this unbelievable opportunity to get our hats just all over the place, and we just did a terrible job at it. We couldn't get them out. We're still shipping from last year. So the biggest failure was not getting that stuff out, but has taught us quite a bit. And
So it's taught you what, like strengthen the bench, make sure you have the resources, the human resources.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just don't take as much on.
Yeah.
And but that's a fine line, because if you tell enough people no, they won't come back. And what if you could have took on more? So it's a fine line, but I like where we're at now. We're
I
getting
think it's
stuff
incredibly
out.
relatable to a lot of people, walking that fine line and, knowing where, when's enough. And
Yeah, I mean, it because when everything's right in front of you, you just want it all. And so we did. I just didn't see any problem with getting them out. I mean, it was a big challenge. I knew it was a big challenge, but like I said, I don't bow under pressure too often. So I was like, come on. And I was extremely excited. We just couldn't get it out. Couldn't get them out.
And for context for everyone listening, this is how I knew right away when I was scheduling with Jeff. Like, this is my kind of guy, because we're trying to figure out a time to schedule this. And he's like, I'm really busy. And now I know you're even busier than I thought, because you have 7 kids.
Yeah.
But he's like, how's 6 a.m. Saturday morning? I'm like, yes, this guy likes to work. He's going in bright and early Saturday morning, 6 a.m. my time's 5 a.m. his time, and he is going into work. So I have a lot of respect for anyone that likes to grind like that and is up at daylight and wants to put in the work. So with that in mind, I do believe that when you're committed to that process and you're willing to grind and work, you're going to have some pleasant surprises. Was it Vince Lombardi who said, like, luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity? What's one outcome your business had that you didn't expect that's been a very pleasant surprise? You mentioned that your biggest failure, that kind of curveball that you had with, being able to get enough product out the door. What's been a real pleasant surprise for you?
Well, I think one of the surprises to me was the felt wholesale side, because when we started this, it was a custom deal. And if I could tell you a story real quick about the straws,
we love stories.
It's kind of, I designed for the company I used to work for. After that, I designed for another company, but I had a no compete clause with them, but they let me get out of it so I could open my own store. So I still had all these designs that I wanted to get out there. Well, my old boss come to me and he said, "Hey, we haven't come out with anything new since you left, and we got to have something new." Because there's a lot of customers that will walk in the store and go, "What's new this year?
Yep.
What's new?" So you just got to have those people satisfied. So I would try to come up with one or two every year. So anyway, I had all these designs ready. My boss comes to me, says, "You got anything?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, let's see them." And I said, "Well, no, let's talk money." He goes, "Oh, you're going to charge me?" I was like, "Yeah, I should have been charging you back then, you know."
I don't operate a nonprofit.
Yeah, well, I mean, he just kind of expected that, because that I didn't get paid extra for that.
Yep.
That was just something that I like to do. He hated it, actually. He hated the styles I came up with. Thought they were really ugly. Because, you know, we came from a time where everything was just a plain white straw. That's what everybody wore. And I had these different ideas. And he was older. He just hated it. And he didn't want to do it. And then
what did the market say? Did the market agree with you, or did the market agree with him?
Oh, they agree with me.
Yeah.
And it blew his mind. And so the next year I came out with another thing, and he's like, "Oh, that's hideous." And I said, "Well, let's see what the stores think." And they loved it. The people loved it. And, you know, the next year I come back and he goes, "Well, that's pretty ugly, so I guess it's going to work." You know, he never questioned it after that. But anyway, we talked about the money. I came up with something I thought was incredibly reasonable. And he said, no, we can't do that. I said, "You go ask Earl CFO." I said, "You go ask her how many millions of dollars worth of our hats that we sold that I designed. Millions of dollars." "Oh, I know. I can't do that. I can't do that much." And I said, "Well, I mean, we're not going to do it." So 2 weeks later, he says, "Hey, time's up. We got to do this. Let's do it." I said, "Okay, great. Awesome." And he goes, "Let's talk about the money." I said, "The money didn't change." He said, "Oh, you know," he couldn't do it. To this day, I don't know why, but because it was a very reasonable deal. But he didn't do it. My father-in-law said, "Hey, what Keith's saying?" I said, "Oh, I couldn't do it. It's just too much money." He goes, "Well, screw him. You know, we'll just do it ourselves." And I was like, "Oh, you know, gotta get a new place. We gotta get all new machinery. You can't use the same machinery. You gotta get bodies." I mean, it's just a whole nother, it is everything again. And he goes,
Yep.
"Well, just how much is it going to be?" I said, "I don't know. I'll tell you in the morning." Did a spreadsheet, showed him. He goes, "Get on the phone." And so it's funny, but I mean, we're in the straw business because they wouldn't get our bodies. I mean, he didn't want my style. So it kind of forced us into doing our own thing. And so we started doing those, because in the beginning we carried everybody's hats.
Yeah.
We had everybody in here. And just over time, people stopped asking for everybody else and started demanding ours. And so now the only thing we carry is ours. And that's
Which is
not
a nice
by,
position to be in, because now there's no brand confusion when people walk in your door.
yeah, you have control over your own destiny. But I mean, I just don't remember the last time somebody came in and even asked for a different hat. So it's really great. But I kind of saw us doing straws. I could have seen that from the beginning. Once he said, "Yeah, get on the phone and do it." Once he made the facility available, he just built us a little straw factory on the side of his trucking yard. So it's kind of cool.
Nice.
But now we're under one roof, we got everything here. But I never saw the felts coming into it. I just didn't think we'd ever be able to do that. And I had a customer who was buying straws, and he kept saying, "You got to make felts, man. I want to sell these. I want to sell these." And so I had this one guy just really hounded me on making felts. I said, "Okay, let me figure this out." So I figured it out, said, "Okay, we're going to do this." And I go to this guy and said, "All right, we're going to do it." And then he backed out. And so I was like, well, now I got these bodies, like, what am I going to do? So we went out, we found a couple people right off the bat. So it wasn't a big deal. So pleasant surprise on that was making the felts work, because I just didn't think we'd ever, with as little as we are, I didn't think we'd be able to make wholesale work. And I think we have.
Well, I think this is a great lesson for any entrepreneur listening right now about knowing your value and standing firm. Here's the price. Here's what it would cost for you to have my intellectual property in the form of my designs for these straw hats. And if they say no, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to lower my price. That all of a sudden that becomes a race to the bottom when you're willing to lower your price.
Yeah.
Standing firm, knowing your value. And it reached a point where this is one of the things I love about your father-in-law. There's a guy that recognizes opportunity when it rears its head. Okay, let's go do it ourselves. And it's someone who's predisposed towards action. And I think what's really cool about that is when you're in the trucking industry, it's kind of the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, for the economy. Because when the country starts shipping less and less, that's like, we're in a recession right now, regardless of how the government decides to redefine it. And when less and less is shipping out the door, you recognize very quickly economic conditions. And I imagine being intimately involved in that industry, like, he's got his finger on the pulse of where the opportunities are. What's out there and what isn't. And he just saw that conversation you had with your former boss, and he's like, you know what, this is an opportunity. And I just think it's a really cool story. Speaking of really cool stories and your brand just carrying a lot of cachet and weight and respect, you had a very cool experience with a couple of young men who traveled great lengths to come to your store. And I'd love to have you share that story with everyone, Jeff, because it might seem like a little thing, what Jeff's about to share with us, but I think it's a big thing. I think little things make a big difference. And it says a lot about a brand, the lengths people are willing to go to. I talk a lot about people being super fans, whether it's a super fan of an artist, a brand of any kind. These are a couple super fans. And tell us about these boys from Kansas, Jeff.
Well, I'll tell you about those guys, tell you about a couple others too. These guys come in and, we were kind of busy, and we were just shaping hats. And so they were patient, they waited, and then they get their hats, and, they're just pretty nonchalant, and we're like, "Oh, hey, where are you from?" We're like, "Oh, we're from Kansas." Like, "What are you doing down here? You're rodeoing or anything?" They're like, "No, we came to get a hat." And they're like, "Yeah." And they came in to get these straw hats. And I don't know. I mean, it just might not seem like a big deal, but those guys came a long way and passed by a lot of stores to get a couple of straw hats. So the felt hats,
For a little context, Jeff,
to me, that's
before
a
you go any
different
further,
story.
for a little context, let's just take the midpoint. I mapped this out. Let's take the midpoint of Kansas, which is due north of Decatur, Texas, Kansas City. And they might be further north, further northwest, further northeast, or maybe a little south. That's 479.3 miles, not even including traffic, 6 hours and 46 minutes, if you're lucky.
Yeah. For a straw hat.
For a straw hat. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you could have, got at a lot of places along the way.
Like,
So,
conservatively, how many places you think they might have passed to get to you?
50. I mean,
Yeah.
at least in one direction. But I had another guy. He found us on Instagram, called me in March and said, I want to come down in August and order a custom. I said, great. He goes, I'm gonna be riding my bike. I was like, cool, and get to looking. He's from Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And so he rides his motorcycle 2,400 miles to come and order a hat.
I thought maybe he's taking his 10-speed from Dallas or something.
No, he's taking his bike. So he gets there and he orders a hat, and we had a great time. And I hear him giving our girl his shipping address. I said, no, you got to come back so we can shape it while you're here. He goes, I will never make this trip again. He goes, you're shipping me the hat. But so he came down. He wanted a hat. He always wanted a hat. He came down and ordered a hat. And a friend of his always wanted boots. So these two guys, one came and got a hat. The other one went one town over and got a pair of boots. And they drove back to Vancouver. So 2,400 miles.
And that says a lot about brand loyalty. But I also think what it speaks to is, because you can get a hat anywhere, you can get boots anywhere. He could have ordered it online from you. It speaks to the experience. And I've said this, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times on this podcast. No matter what you sell, product or service, you need to be making it a unique experience. There are tons of amusement parks, but nothing compares to Disney because of the experience, because of all the different wonderful touch points they create every step of the way for you while you're at their facility. So what's the experience like? How do you make it unique?
Well, I try to make it unique to every person. Of course, every person is different. And so, your best time might not be my best time. So it's a read on people, but you just try to kill them with knowledge. I think a smart customer is your best customer. Most people have never seen a way you make hats. And so they walk in, we have the sales floor with all these hats, and then right behind this door is where we make them. And that's not very often that you can go and see that.
Yep.
And it's you can't go and see that at the level that we're doing it, I think, anywhere. And seeing all the machines is very impressive, but for us, the way we do things is incredibly slow, even though it's production. But the way we do things is, if it's better to make it with a machine, we do it by machine. If it's better by hand, we do it by hand.
So each step of the process is guided by that one
dictated
decision.
By that, yes. Yep. And so I have sanding machines, like $30,000-$40,000 sanding machines, and I use them in the very beginning of the process, never use it after.
Yep.
And then production companies, some use them exclusively. That's the only thing they do. And then some do half and half. We use them one time. Everything else is done with hand sanders and ultimately by hand, which takes a long time, but it makes a better hat.
Yeah, I think that experience, just like the example you gave, people get to come in and they get to see not just the finished product that gets handed to them or shipped to them. Like they get to come in and see how things are done. And in a world that's becoming more and more virtual, you can't do that in the metasphere. You can't like we've become in many ways so disconnected from reality. And I mean that in the literal sense, that people are craving real experiences more than ever. Especially millennials or Gen Z, Zoomers, whatever they're called now, Jeff. They value experiences over anything else. They are paying for experiences versus just buying things, So I do believe that in, everyone who's listening to this, whatever industry you're in, like you need to prioritize the experience as Jeff does, give them a peek behind the scenes and show them just what's involved in creating quality in whatever you're doing. What would you say is, as you look at your industry and you look at you and your business, what's one thing about your industry that almost no one agrees with you about? And I ask you that because I'm a bit of a contrarian.
Yeah.
Not like tinfoil hat, but like what's one thing that no one in your industry really agrees with you about?
That by and far it's X's. X's are kind of a grade on the quality, and it used to, there used to be a lot of integrity involved, all the different companies, and there were many more companies than there are today. But they all
can we backtrack and for like someone who's not familiar with the industry, explain what the X rating is? And I don't mean that like for people who don't know what I'm talking about. We're not talking about X rating like you think we might be. Get your mind out of the gutter. It's actually rating the quality of the fur and the hat. What?
Yeah, like grade A, like eggs, grade A eggs or anything. But an X is not it's not a government standard. It's just something they came up with. It used to dictate how much beaver was in the hat. Mm-hmm. And so when it started, it was actually 10 X's. And a 10X was 100% beaver, and then they went to 100X. And, that was a good analogy because 100X is 100%, and a 50X. But it's just not the case. So now you have like 1,000X, you have a 5X. 5X doesn't have any beaver in it at all. And just every single company has a different recipe for what they call a 10X. And
there's just no government standard for quality whatsoever.
There's none, and it's not even close. So you'll see 10Xs nowadays for maybe $200, and you'll see them for $500. And for a general consumer, why would I pay $500 for a 10X when I can pay $200 for a 10X? Well, it's because they're not the same hat. Well, of course it is. They're both 10Xs. No, they're not. So that's something I really struggle with. I don't stamp X's in the hats. We give them names because for the amount of beaver that we use over somebody else's is substantial. In some cases, we use a lot more beaver than some other companies and more than anybody I know. So it's just not fair to say, well, this is $500 versus $200 because it's not the same hat. I wish there was some kind of way everybody could come together and say, this is what we're using. That way a end consumer can justify what they're buying.
And there's transparency.
Correct.
Yeah. I kind of liken that to, if you look at my industry, like what constitutes being a best-selling author anymore. There are ways that people will say they're a best-selling author. They'll release a book, make it free for the first month, and literally pay people to buy it on Amazon, buy it, air quotes, for free, to reach number one in their category. And they'll pick an obscure category like, animal husbandry or podiatry, or just something absurd. And it'll be a nonfiction business book. And they'll just slap that number one best-selling author seal on their website. And like, there's no quality control government standard of any kind. So literally anyone can find a way to just market their way to, a certain kind of, all we want, standard, I guess. But it becomes a lot of sizzle and very little steak, much like, I'm really glad you brought up that the X rating quality standard in your industry, because it seems like so much of it is just, quote, marketing. And when you're doing that, there's marketing for facilitative purposes and marketing for manipulative purposes, and it's transparency would go a long way, right?
Yeah, the first time I saw that just really happen right before my eyes, it was with this 200X. So there was a 200X, like, well, how is that a 200X? What the hell is a 200X? Yep. Well, it's a pure beaver, but it's got this gold buckle on it. And we're like, okay.
So it's 200% beaver felt. Okay.
Yeah. So, but it was $1,600, and we're like, okay, this is back in the day. This is 20 years ago. We're like, okay, whatever. And so they come up with this other 200X, and we went from $1,600 to $700. I said, whoa, what happened there?
Yeah.
Well, this one's only 40% beaver. Like, wait, how's it a 200X? Well, it's got a gold buckle set and it's got a diamond. It's got a diamond in it. So, I mean, it's just like, we'll call it whatever we want.
Yeah, at that point, I don't believe that it's real gold or a real diamond, right?
It actually was. I mean, well, they had what do you call it? Authentication papers on it or something. I don't know, but it was crazy. It's like, wow, you can just say whatever you want, can't you? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we are living kind of in the post-fact era with the internet now today. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm a French model. Yeah.
Discernment. And I just did an episode on discernment not too long ago. Discernment is more and more important, like now more than ever, to be able to understand, what is real. So I asked you about your industry and kind of what no one agrees with you about. What do you think people misunderstand about Jeff Biggars? What do they misunderstand the most about you?
I don't know. That's a good one. I don't care a whole lot about what other people think or say. But my end goal is just to have the best hat out there, and I want as many people as possible to be able to have one. We can't make hats for everybody.
Yep.
And even if we could, they wouldn't be the best. So I just want to make as many of the best hats as we can and get them out there.
So what's kind of looking backwards, I like to kind of think of this as sort of the $1 million question in my mind for everybody is, if you could go back in time and give yourself, advice, whether it was when you were, an 18-year-old young adult, or maybe when you first started, I'll let you choose. When you're really young adult, or when you first started Biggar Hats, what's one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, that you would go back and tell your younger self?
Well, I'll start with when we first started here, because all the mistakes I made when I was younger, I think were absolutely necessary to learn from. But from here, I just, I mean, I'd hate to say it, but I just didn't see the potential of where we're at right now. Uh, I, I I didn't see it this. I mean, we've been around for 10 years. I wouldn't say this quick or whatever. Um, but I just, I knew we were going to make the greatest custom hats. I knew that. I didn't think we'd be in the wholesale business as well to the extent that we are. And in the beginning, I would have kind of paid more attention to that. I spent a lot of money and wasted a lot of time on things um, in the first couple of years that just didn't pay off. And I could have used that energy getting further than we are now.
Excellent. Who, you said you didn't see that potential. Was there somebody who did? You know, because I think, you know, behind every great success story, there's someone who saw something in you or the business that maybe you didn't see in yourself at the time.
I think I don't think it was just one other person. There was a whole lot of people, and I have one friend in particular, the guy that that was developing the 3D printed parts
Yeah.
with this, who it, I mean, he really is a genius. But he would say things like, "You're just not charging enough. You're not, you're not doing enough." And I was like, "I'm charging what I can charge. I'm charging what I can charge, and I want to make it affordable for everybody. You know." And just the problem is, we didn't make any money. We just were not making money, and I just thought that if I went up in price, people were going to walk away, and they didn't. And we got our prices up to where we were actually making money, which is pretty important from what my mother-in-law tells me. And unfortunately, prices keep going up, not on our side, but on the manufacturing side and the materials. But it hasn't been a deterrent. There's people that just have kind of in their mind that they want $100 felt hat, and it's just not possible anymore. But
That's what they want. That you're not for them and they're not for you.
we're not for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, just for the most part, just price is not a deterrent. So
I really need people to hear that, because I do believe, like most people, if you're providing exceptional product or service, you can and should raise your price.
yeah, and it's the same with time, which is as important or more important, because last year we like I said, we're still making last year's hats, but as far as customs, that's a long time. That's a long time to
Yeah.
wait. I get it. It's a long time to wait, but that is the wait. And I just have very few people, unless they're wanting, need it for a wedding or something like that. Just the vast majority of the time, okay, well, just call me when it's done. So that speaks volumes to me as far as
Being worth the wait,
what
right?
you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you're doing and why you're doing it, because if people are willing to spend that much, and it's not one time. I mean, we just have so many people that have not one or two, but I mean several hats. And, you know, just as soon as they pick another one up, they'll order another color. And it's not because they're wearing out, I promise, you know, they just like them so much that they want to put the money there.
Yeah, you put in your rotation of what you wear. Absolutely.
Right.
So Jeff, as we wrap up here, I'd love to ask, what's one question I should have asked, but I didn't? You know, tell me where I dropped the ball. What's one question I should have asked, but I didn't? And go ahead and how would you answer that?
One question you should have asked. I don't know. I think you
shame me here.
I think you did quite well. It's really easy for me to talk about hats.
Yep.
And really hard for me to talk about myself. So doing an interview like this, you have to marry those. And so it's hard for me to come on and do, because I'm a hat maker. I'm not a, you know, I'm not a this upfront kind of guy. So I don't know what question you should have asked. Maybe I think you did quite well.
So someone wants to get a custom hat, or maybe they instant gratification kicks in and they just want to get a Jeff Biggars hat from a retailer. Where do they go online and in person to find you and to find your products?
Best place to go is biggarhats.com. It's BIGGAR hats.com. And there's a great video that Think Branded Media did for us. And it kind of tells you who we are and what we do. But there's also a link on there that shows you where you can find our retailers to get a hat, because we do have some hats in stock, very little. I try to keep our retailers stocked up and our customs going. So if you're looking for something just right now, maybe give us a call and tell us what you want, and we can find one of our retailers that has it.
Jeff does a very smart thing, and I want to encourage every single one of you. This is my last little nugget of wisdom for you if you're still listening to me right now. And that is to buy the misspelling of your brand name online. So if you spelled Coach Brew, Coach BREW.com, that would still take you to Coach Brew, Coach BRU.com, which is my website. Jeff, in his infinite wisdom, has purchased Biggar, as in BIGGER, like the size, BiggarHats.com, which redirects you to Biggar Hat Store, which is BIGGAR. Hugely important for all of you to do that.
Just a couple of bucks.
Yeah, it's just a couple of bucks. And if you think, I don't need to do that, because I do get pushback on that with coaching clients, Jeff. I'm like, you guys do realize the average reading level in the US is 5th grade. So and that's the average, which means there are plenty of people lower than that. How good do you think they spell?
Yeah.
And as they're listening to something, people spell the way they hear things, phonetically or whatever. You need to buy the misspelling of your name, your domain name, your brand, all that. So yeah. I love
we own probably I don't know, 10 or so websites that are all kind of what you think it would. And my mother-in-law that's one thing she just did not agree with. She's like, you need Biggar Hats and Biggar Hat Store, and that's it. And I'm like, no, we need to Corey, actually, that my computer guy, he's the one that really pushed us. He's like, you just need to get everything that sounds like it, and anything that people would search for. So, if they would search for Texas custom hat, you need to buy that, so we have, like I said, maybe 10 or so that we got that are either misspellings or something somebody would search for.
I hope everyone's hearing this and following this advice. So make that list yourself and buy that up. It's money well spent, because your website is really, it's now the first impression people have of your brand before they ever walk in your brick and mortar store. It's your welcome mat. It's your front door, so to speak. So Jeff, thanks again so much. You can go to biggarhats.com and you can spell it however the hell you want, and it will take you to Jeff's hat store. So awesome, Jeff. Thanks so much. Any final parting words of wisdom for everyone?
Well, just kind of touching on the website and stuff like that. We have in the beginning, you know, when people come in, you're like, hey, I'm Jeff Biggars and we do this and we do this, and let me show you this, and come here and you got to touch this. And nowadays we have people come in and they've just done their research. You know, they've seen our website, they've been all over our social media, and they'll come in and I'll be like, I'm Jeff Biggars and this, and they're like, yeah, we know. And go, all right, well, let me show you this. Yeah, we saw that on Instagram, and we got this. Yeah, we saw that. I mean, they're so much more educated now, and it also it helps you appreciate the work that you've put in, because social media is so important, and it's just an everyday thing that you have to do. You just become, you know, a slave to it, just always posting or commenting or whatever. And to see people come in because of that work, really, okay, all right, maybe I am doing it right, you know. But
Planting seeds. Yep, planting and watering.
Yeah, planting seeds, and it's unfortunately it's something you just got to do every day, but it certainly does pay off.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff. Stick around. Want to chat with you offline here. I'm going to end the recording here. Everybody remember to go to biggarhats.com. Thanks for listening to the Coach Brew podcast.